All right, strap yourselves in, because today we're going deep into the wonderful world of Sharknado,
Oh, yeah.
that 2013 film that pretty much like defied all logic
Yeah.
and kind of took the internet by storm,
You could say that again?
became this like cult classic phenomenon.
Absolutely.
We've got a fascinating critique here. And I'm really interested to kind of unpack not just what makes the movie tick, but how it managed to achieve this like crazy notoriety and become like, the poster child for so bad it's good,
Yeah.
entertainment.
The thing with Sharknado is it goes beyond just being a movie. It really is like a cultural phenomenon. It's a testament to the power of camp. It really makes you kind of question, what makes something entertaining.
Yeah, it really does. It's a wild ride from start to finish, that's for sure. I mean, for those who haven't braved the storm yet, we're talking about a movie where a tornado picks up sharks from the ocean and unleashes them on Los Angeles. I'm curious, when you talk about camp, like what exactly does that mean in the context of a film like this?
That's a great question. Camp, in its simplest form, is an aesthetic that kind of, revels in exaggeration and theatricality.
Yeah.
It's about being so over the top that it becomes humorous.
Okay.
And Sharknado really embraces this. Think about like those classic B movies, from like the 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
filled with, cheesy special effects, melodramatic acting. Camp draws from that tradition,
Yeah.
but it also adds this layer of self-awareness, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's about deliberately playing with those tropes and kind of, winking at the audience saying,
Right.
we know this is ridiculous, but that's what makes it fun.
Right, right. Okay. So it's not just about being bad, it's about being intentionally bad in a way that's enjoyable. And I can definitely see that in Sharknado, from the premise itself to the dialogue. I mean, who can forget that iconic line? We're going to need a bigger chopper.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Exactly. Yeah, that line perfectly encapsulates Sharknado's whole approach. It's like a clear homage to Jaws, but delivered with this knowing wink, It's a moment that's both funny and self-aware,
Yeah.
and it invites the audience to be in on the joke.
Yeah.
And that intentional awkwardness, it extends to a lot of the film's attempts at, like, emotional depth,
Oh, yeah.
which often fall flat.
Yeah.
It just adds to that campy humor.
Right. It's like they try to have these serious, heartfelt moments amidst the shark-infested chaos. And it just creates this like wonderfully jarring contrast.
Yeah.
And speaking of over the top, the film like does not shy away from exposition dumps that really stretch the boundaries of scientific plausibility.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
Remember that scene where they decide to bomb the tornado?
Oh.
Like, that's a completely absurd solution, delivered with the utmost seriousness. And it just perfectly highlights the film's disregard for, logic or realism.
Right.
But that disregard is crucial to understanding the film's appeal.
Uh-huh.
By abandoning any pretense of scientific accuracy, Sharknado frees itself to embrace, this pure joy of ridiculous spectacle. It's a celebration of the impossible, inviting the audience to just sit back and enjoy the ride.
And what a ride it is. I mean, we're talking sharks raining down on Los Angeles,
Yeah.
chainsaws battling great whites, and our hero Finn facing off against these airborne predators with a level of earnestness that is both like admirable and hilarious at the same time. It's a plot that seems to constantly escalate, throwing one outrageous scenario after another at the audience. Just when you think it can't get any crazier, it does.
Yeah, that relentless pacing is another, key element of the film's so bad it's good charm. The plot barely gives you a moment to breathe. It's jumping from one absurd set piece to the next.
Yeah.
Characters make decisions that defy logic, like Finn's choice to drive into the heart of the storm with explosives.
Right.
A decision that would be completely unbelievable in any other context.
Yeah, but in the world of Sharknado, it somehow makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
It's like the film operates on its own set of rules where logic takes a back seat to, like, pure, unadulterated entertainment.
Right.
But even with all this chaos, we still have these characters, right, trying to navigate this shark-infested apocalypse. We have Finn, the stoic hero, played with surprising sincerity by Ian Ziering, April, his estranged wife, who seems to just be along for the wild ride, and this whole cast of supporting characters who kind of flit in and out of the story.
It's fascinating to see how these characters, despite their often like one-dimensional portrayals, function within the film's like broader framework. They're archetypes, pulled straight from the disaster movie playbook, the reluctant hero, the damsel in distress, the comic relief sidekick. But their presence reinforces the film's self-aware embrace of these genre conventions.
Right? It's like they're knowingly playing with these familiar tropes, turning them up to 11,
Yes.
and reveling in the absurdity of it all.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that Sharknado wasn't made in a vacuum, right? It emerged at a time when disaster movies were experiencing this, like resurgence,
Yeah.
and there's this certain fascination with like outlandish scenarios and CGI-fueled spectacle.
Yeah.
Sharknado tapped into that cultural moment, but it did so with a wink and a nudge,
Yeah.
acknowledging the inherent absurdity of the genre while simultaneously embracing it. And speaking of spectacle, we can't talk about Sharknado without addressing the elephant in the room, or rather the shark in the room,
Right.
the special effects.
Oh, yes, the special effects. They are something else, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, you got sharks flying through the air, flopping onto the streets, even getting chainsawed in half. It's a visual feast of, well, let's just say, it's not exactly Industrial Light and Magic.
Right. This is where Sharknado really pushes the boundaries of so bad it's good. The CGI it's undeniably rough around the edges.
Yeah.
But that's part of what makes it so endearing. It's almost as if the film is saying, like, look, we know these effects aren't great,
Right.
but we're going to have fun with them anyway. And that self-awareness, that willingness to embrace the limitations, that's what elevates the film beyond, simple bad filmmaking.
It's like they're turning the bad effects into a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it works. You can't help but laugh at the sheer audacity of it all. It reminds me of those old monster movies where the limitations of the technology actually added to the charm.
You're exactly right. There's a certain nostalgia factor at play here. Sharknado's low budget effects, they kind of evoke a sense of playful absurdity that harkens back to a time when special effects were more about, imagination than realism.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most entertaining experiences come from embracing those limitations and finding creative ways to work around them.
It's like they're saying, we may not have $1 million budget for CGI, but we've got a whole lot of heart.
Right.
And a willingness to have fun. And that energy, is infectious.
Yeah.
You can really feel the director, Anthony C. Ferrante, reveling in the chaos.
Ferrante's vision is crucial to understanding Sharknado's success. He fully commits to the absurdity, right? And creating a tone that's both chaotic and cartoonish.
Yeah. Yeah.
The action sequences, while often disjointed, are a testament to his willingness to, just push the boundaries of believability.
Yeah.
It's like a kid playing with his toys, throwing everything he can at the screen and seeing what sticks.
And it's that sense of playfulness, that unapologetic embrace of the ridiculous that makes Sharknado so much fun to watch.
Right.
It's a film that never takes itself too seriously.
Yeah.
And that allows the audience to relax and simply enjoy the ride. But I'm wondering, is there anything more to Sharknado than just surface level entertainment?
Yeah.
Does it have anything to say about our culture, our fears, our fascination with disaster?
That's a great question. And it's one that critics have debated since the film's release. While, Sharknado doesn't offer any profound philosophical insights.
Yeah.
It does tap into some interesting cultural anxieties.
Okay.
The film plays on our fascination with disaster movies, those big budget spectacles that show us, cities crumbling and nature wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
But it also injects this healthy dose of humor and self-awareness into the mix.
Yeah.
Almost, poking fun at our obsession with these end of the world scenarios.
So it's both indulging in and subverting those disaster movie tropes
Exactly.
at the same time.
And let's not forget the sharks,
Right.
Sharks have always held a special place in our collective imagination, representing both fear and fascination.
Yeah.
They're powerful predators, and their presence in our mythology and storytelling goes back centuries. Sharknado capitalizes on that primal fear.
Yeah.
But it also turns it on its head,
Yeah.
making the sharks the agents of a natural disaster rather than just solitary hunters.
It's like they've taken this deeply ingrained fear and turned it into something both terrifying and absurdly entertaining at the same time.
Yeah.
And that speaks to the film's ability to tap into something deeper, something primal,
Right.
while still maintaining that sense of humor. But Sharknado wasn't just a hit in theaters. It became a viral sensation.
Well, yeah.
People were live tweeting the film, creating memes, sharing their reactions online. What do you think it was about Sharknado that made it such a perfect fit for the social media age?
You've hit on a crucial point. Sharknado's success is intrinsically linked to its timing and its like savvy use of social media,
Mm.
you know. The film premiered on the Sci-Fi Channel, which already had, a built-in audience for cheesy over-the-top entertainment.
Right.
But it was the social media buzz,
Yeah.
the real-time reactions,
Yeah.
the shared sense of absurdity that propelled the film into, like, the cultural stratosphere,
Sure.
People weren't just watching Sharknado.
Yeah.
They were experiencing it together,
Right.
sharing their laughter, their disbelief, and their love for its sheer ridiculousness.
It was the perfect storm, so to speak.
Yes.
Of a film that was like ripe for memification and a culture that was like ready to embrace and share its absurdity. And it's interesting to think about how that viral success influenced the film industry,
Yeah.
Like after Sharknado, there was this sudden surge of intentionally bad movies,
Right.
all trying to capture that same like so bad it's good magic.
Yeah.
Do you think those films were successful in like replicating what Sharknado achieved?
That's a fascinating question. And it raises this larger point about the nature of, like, so bad it's good entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, can you intentionally create something that's so bad it becomes good?
Right.
Or is there something special about those, like, accidental masterpieces?
Yeah.
Those films that stumble into greatness through, like, their sheer incompetence.
Right. Yeah.
Sharknado's success certainly inspired a wave of imitators,
Mm.
but few, if any, managed to achieve the same level of, like, cultural impact.
Perhaps there's something about that unintentional charm,
Yeah.
that genuine lack of self-awareness that
Mhm.
makes those films so endearing.
It's like lightning in a bottle. You can try to recreate the conditions,
Yeah.
but there's no guarantee you'll get that same result.
Mhm.
That's part of what makes, like, analyzing a film like Sharknado so fascinating. It challenges our traditional notions of, like, good and bad cinema.
Yeah. Right.
It forces us to reconsider what we find entertaining and why.
It definitely throws a wrench in the whole critical apparatus, doesn't
Yeah.
it? We're so used to like evaluating films based on their technical merits, their storytelling prowess, their acting performances. But Sharknado seems to exist outside of those conventions. It's a film that's both aware of and indifferent to those like traditional standards.
And that's precisely why it resonates with audiences.
Yeah.
It offers a kind of escapism that's both, like, refreshing and liberating.
Mm.
You don't have to worry about plot holes or character development or whether the CGI is convincing. You can simply surrender to the absurdity
Right.
and enjoy the ride.
It's a film that invites you to like turn off your brain and embrace the pure, unadulterated joy of cinematic chaos. And in a world that's often filled with like stress and uncertainty, that kind of escapism can be incredibly appealing. But it also makes you think about the line between like intention and accident,
Yeah.
between deliberate camp and just plain bad filmmaking.
You've hit on a key point there. Is Sharknado intentionally bad? Or is it, like, a happy accident, a film that stumbled into greatness through its sheer lack of pretension?
Yeah.
That's a question that's been debated endlessly, and I think it's one that ultimately comes down to, like, personal interpretation.
It's like a Rorschach test for your sense of humor.
Right.
What you see in Sharknado says as much about you as it does about the film itself, and that's what makes it such a like fascinating cultural artifact. It's a film that sparks conversation, generates memes, and continues to like entertain and bewilder audiences years after its release.
And I think that's ultimately the legacy of Sharknado.
Mm.
It's a film that reminded us that entertainment can come in the most unexpected forms. It challenged our preconceived notions of what a movie should be, and it showed us that sometimes the most enjoyable experiences come from embracing the absurd, the ridiculous, the gloriously over the top.
So, as we emerge from this deep dive into the world of Sharknado, I think the key takeaway for you, dear listener, is this. Don't be afraid to embrace the unexpected. Seek out those films that challenge your expectations, that make you laugh and cringe and shake your head in disbelief. Because sometimes the most memorable experiences come from those films that dare to be different, those films that fly in the face of convention and say, hey, we're going to throw some sharks in a tornado and you're going to love it.
And who knows, you might just find yourself swept away by the sheer audacity of it all.
Perfectly put. So until our next deep dive, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember.
All right, so are you ready to dive in? Because today we are tackling a cult classic.
Oh, yeah.
And it's one that I think a lot of people have probably seen Sharknado. And I have to admit, this is when I went into kicking and screaming, but it's just
Yeah.
one of those that you can't help but just be entertained by. And so we're going to take a deep dive into Sharknado.
I love it. I love it.
And specifically how it became the phenomenon
Yeah.
that it is.
It really is. I mean, it's bizarre how this movie took off the way it did.
It really is. I mean, sharks in a tornado. It's like somebody took two fears and threw them together and said, let's make a movie.
It's so bad. It's good, though, right?
Yeah,
like, it's just the right amount of camp.
It is so bad. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I found really interesting as we were looking into Sharknado was the fact that a lot of it was improvised.
Oh, yeah.
Which in low-budget filmmaking, I guess I can see that happening. But is that common? Like, even with big-budget films, do they have moments of improvisation?
They do, but it's much more structured and controlled.
Okay.
You know, they'll have like a scene and they'll say, okay, you know we want to get from A to Z, but, you know, play around within that.
Okay.
But with Sharknado, it sounds like it was just like, go.
Yeah. Just utter chaos. I mean, when you watch it, it feels like utter chaos. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that kind of lends itself to that B-movie aesthetic as well, you know?
Yeah.
Just gives it that scrappy, unpredictable energy.
It's funny you say B-movie aesthetic because another thing that we found was that they used a ton of stock footage.
Well, yeah. I mean,
like, especially with the sharks. Like,
especially for a low-budget film.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a budget thing.
Saves money.
Right. But does that also play into that?
Oh, totally.
Like, self-aware
I think so.
B-movie? Like,
yeah, it's very tongue-in-cheek. You know, it's like, we know this isn't Jaws.
Yeah.
But we're going to have fun with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny because you think about it from the actor's perspective. You get this script and it's like sharks and a tornado. And by the way, we're going to use all this stock footage.
Yeah.
Like, did they know what they were getting into?
Well, speaking of the actors, you know, one thing that I thought was interesting was that Tara Reid initially didn't want to do the sequels.
She didn't.
No, it sounded like she thought the first one was going to be a flop.
Oh, that's funny.
You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that just goes to show you that, like, even the people involved sometimes don't see
the magic.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of the thing about these cult classic films, right?
Yeah, totally. It's kind of a lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, that's like you can't force it.
Yeah.
Speak of things. You can't force. We got to talk about the title.
The title.
Because apparently the original working title was Dark Skies.
Oh, really?
Can you imagine Dark Skies?
Dark Skies is so generic. It could be like a million different...
It could be anything.
Thrillers.
It could be, you know, some kind of like, you know, alien invasion movie.
Exactly.
Or, you know, any kind of...
Or supernatural.
Supernatural. Yeah, Sharknado.
Yeah, Sharknado tells you exactly what you're getting.
Right.
Like, it leaves no
question.
room for the imagination.
But, okay, so was it just the title? Because, I mean, plenty of movies have wacky names, right?
Right.
What was it about the social media response to Sharknado?
Well, you have to think about the time, too.
Okay.
This was when Twitter was really kind of
Yeah.
coming into its own.
Yeah.
And it was the early days of people live tweeting, you know, events and movies.
Okay.
And so what happened was people were watching Sharknado and live tweeting their reactions.
Okay.
And it was so bad it was good that it just created this frenzy.
So it was the perfect storm.
Yeah.
It was a so bad it's good movie.
Yeah.
It was a ridiculous title.
Uh-huh.
And it was like the perfect time.
And then you had celebrities jumping in on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like people like Damon Lindelof and Mia Farrow.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that just added to the whole thing.
Okay, so it really was like the perfect time.
It really was.
For this to happen.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder, could Sharknado happen today?
Right.
I mean, could a movie...
It's hard to say.
Even one this brilliantly bad, could it capture that same kind of attention?
Right.
I mean,
because the way we consume media is so different now.
Yeah, everyone's so jaded.
Yeah.
Like, it's like we've seen it all.
Yeah, and the social media landscape
right.
is so different now.
Yeah, it's so saturated.
Yeah. So who knows?
Right.
Maybe there's another Sharknado lurking out there, just waiting for the right moment.
That's a great question to leave everyone with.
Yeah.
So thank you for taking this deep dive with us into Sharknado.
Absolutely.
And to everyone listening, keep your eyes peeled because the next Sharknado, whatever it may be, could be right around the corner.
It could be.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.